Today we're going to be going over how to play Kamala, also known as Miss Marvel, in the Marvel Avengers beta. Miss Marvel was one of the first characters that I really got the hang of, and really started to like because she reminded me of my boy Luffy. But the real selling point for playing Miss Marvel is that she has the highest burst damage in the game, so far. Despite all the videos that you might have seen on the internet of people doing these crazy long combos, juggling enemies for like 10 seconds, you really just want to get the most damage within the shortest time possible. So let's first talk about Miss Marvel's intrinsic perks. These are basically her superpowers and what makes her special. This is found in the 4th skill tree, and her main intrinsic ability is polymorph. So we'll just go over the main important ones that you'll use the most and that you should be aware of. Each time you use polymorph, all attacks get a damage buff and an impact buff. Like all other intrinsic abilities, this is a resource that drains the more you use it. One thing that's not explained that well within the game is that you have to hold the polymorph button to actively use it. Once you let go, your intrinsic ability is no longer active and your intrinsic meter will stop depleting. This is actually really beneficial because, especially with power attacks that you have to charge up, you can activate it right before your ability lands to get that damage buff, and then let it go immediately so that you drain as little of the meter as possible. If we go down to the 3rd skill called Shining Will, this states that using polymorph will regenerate willpower, aka health, 4% per second. And these are the two main things that you need to know. Using polymorph will give you a damage buff and heal you over time. And this is important because you always want to be managing your intrinsic meter to always have that ability to heal when you need it. The two rightmost skills are signature attacks, which honestly aren't that good, at least in the beta, which I'll go over why later on in the video. In the full version of the game, there might be skills that increase the value of these. Next, we'll go over Miss Marvel's heroic abilities. And so the first and most notable one is Embiggen. Along with the obvious increase to the AoE of attacks, a thing to note is that using this ability refills some willpower. So the main scenarios that you're going to be using this are to take out low level enemies with your massive AoE damage, or as just a backup to regain some health. The assault heroic ability is High 5, and this is really good for damaging multiple enemies at once. And this does decent damage, but you really have to line up enemies to get the maximum value out of this ability. Finally, for the support heroic ability, we have Healing Spirit, and this refills all of your willpower bar and restores some for your teammates. And this is really like your oh shit button. When your health gets really low, this should be your go-to option for not dying. So with that, let's go over the basic game loop for playing as Miss Marvel. And so we could break this down into 3 different types of scenarios. The first is fighting low-tiered enemies. The way I define low-tiered enemies are any enemies that can be stunned out of their attacks and then displaced into the air or onto the ground. Going up against any of these enemies, you want to be using your bread and butter combo. And this combo is where all your burst damage comes from. You can do about 5 bars of damage, which can take out any low-tiered enemy as long as you finish the combo all the way through. And so to break this combo down, we're first going to use Whirling Wallop to launch enemies into the air. We're then going to use Flying Fist to sneak in a couple of light attacks in. However, we don't want to finish the combo, but instead going straight into the double down kick, which will stun and slam enemies down to the ground. As they're stunned on the ground, that should give us enough time to charge up a power attack called Double Barrel Punch, which again stuns the enemy, to follow up with another power attack called Catapult Kick. And so if all goes well, it should look something like this. The second scenario that I'll explain is going up against bulkier enemies that don't stagger easily. This includes the Prime Adept Synthoids that are tall and purple and have these pink 2-pronged spears, and the Stiletto Riot Bots that are equipped with these blue dual blade electro swords. When going up against these enemies, you want to go straight into your heavy power attacks, both using the abilities with the highest damage. The Double Barrel Punch to Catapult Kick combo already does 3 bars of damage, but more importantly, can be started a little further away. And this is really beneficial because a lot of the larger enemies have hard-hitting melee attacks. Another option is using your signature attacks, which is part of your intrinsic abilities. The 2 of them, Whirlwind and Seismic Slam both do high amounts of damage, but the reason why this isn't as good is that they don't stun these higher tiered enemies. The moves also take a little bit longer to do the same amount of damage. They also don't have as much range, and they take up a bunch of resources from your intrinsic meter, which could be used to heal yourself or just buff your power attack combo using less of your meter. The last and final scenario that I want to explain is when your health is low. As mentioned before, you have 3 ways of healing yourself. The first is using your intrinsic ability. Ideally, when you get to around half health, you want to slowly use your intrinsic ability to get that health back. The other way is using your support heroic healing spirit to refill your entire health bar. And then finally, as a last resort, if healing spirit isn't available, you can use Embiggen to get a little burst of healing. And those are all the specific ways that Ms. Marvel can gain health with her abilities. Other than that, there are 2 other ways that aren't hero specific and are mechanics within the game and can be used to gain some health. And these are doing takedowns. On PS4, this is marked by the triangle and the circle. And secondly is just to pick up those green orbs on the ground that enemies randomly drop. And that's it for the basis on how to play Ms. Marvel. As a tip, if you do have some interesting gear for her, I'd recommend trying to play around that, if it matches with the main movesets you're going to be using. So for example, I had these gamma ray emitter bands, and these inflicted gamma radiation on power attacks, which I use a lot against the heavier enemies. And as you can see, the gamma inflicts a status effect and does extra damage. If you want to learn more about all the status effects within the game, I'd recommend checking out my video, which I'll link here. And these status effects are really interesting. I've been playing with my AI companions a lot, which you can equip with specific gear, so stacking a certain status effect on all characters is pretty cool. And that wraps up my video on how to play Ms. Marvel. If you learned something, or found any of this useful, please drop a like. And if you found a better way to play Ms. Marvel, let me know in the comment section down below. I'll also be posting how to play all the other characters within Marvel Avengers. So, thanks for watching, hope to catch you in the next one, and peace.